Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of modern life? The endless rules, the overlapping systems, the feeling that everything is connected in a web too vast to comprehend. In many parts of the world, the immediate instinct is to simplify, to streamline, to find the most direct path from A to B. But what if that instinct is wrong? What if the ability to not just tolerate, but to thrive within complexity is a sign of a deeper cultural maturity? This is the story of Europe's long and patient relationship with complexity. A story that suggests the richest systems are not simple but layered. Our story begins, as so many do, with the Romans. The Roman Empire was a marvel of standardization. They built straight roads, implemented a unified legal code, and spread a single language of power, Latin, across their vast domain. It was a system designed for clarity and control, a top-down imposition of order. But even then, beneath this veneer of imperial uniformity, a rich tapestry of local cultures, languages, and traditions continued to exist, simmering just below the surface. And when Rome fell, this underlying complexity didn't just re-emerge, it exploded. The medieval period that followed is often misunderstood as a dark age. In reality, it was an age of profound and overlapping systems. A single person could simultaneously be a subject of their local lord, a member of a city guild, a parishioner of the local church, and ultimately, a subject of the Pope in Rome and a distant king or emperor. These were not mutually exclusive identities, they were layered, one on top of the other. Like geological strata, your legal status, your rights, your obligations could change dramatically depending on whether you were in a city or the countryside, whether you were a cleric or a layman. There was no single, simple answer to the question, who's in charge? The answer was always, it's complicated. This acceptance of layered authority became a hallmark of European thought, a fundamental part of its cultural DNA. It was mirrored everywhere, from their art and architecture to their philosophy and theology. Think of the great Gothic cathedrals. They are not simple structures. They are intricate, soaring creations where every element, from the massive vaults to the tiniest gargoyle, has its specific place within a grand symbolic system. Each piece contributes to a whole that is far greater and more complex than the sum of its parts. Or consider the complex theological arguments of medieval scholars like Thomas Aquinas. He wasn't looking for simple answers. He was building vast intellectual systems, attempting to reconcile faith and reason, weaving together scripture, Aristotelian philosophy, and church doctrine into a breathtakingly complex whole. There was a deep-seated belief that the universe itself was a complex, hierarchical system, and that truly understanding it required an appreciation for its many, many layers. It was an intellectual posture that saw simplicity not as a virtue, but as a failure of imagination. This comfort with complexity created a unique environment for growth and innovation. Unlike in highly centralized empires, where a single decree from the top could change everything overnight, change in Europe was often a slow, negotiated process. It was a constant push and pull between different layers of power: the crown, the church, the nobility, the rising merchant class in the cities. This could be frustratingly slow, no doubt, but it also created a remarkable stability and resilience. It prevented the kind of radical, top-down disruptions that could shatter a society. This slow-burn environment allowed for the organic growth of institutions that have shaped the modern world. Universities, independent legal systems, and parliamentary bodies all grew out of this negotiated, multi-layered reality. Today, we see this ancient legacy in the European Union itself, a political entity of almost baffling complexity. It is a multi-layered system of shared sovereignty, where national governments, a European Parliament, a powerful Commission, and a vast bureaucracy all interact in a constant, complex dance of negotiation and compromise. To an outsider, it can look messy, inefficient, and full of contradictions. It's easy to ask, why can't they just simplify it? But to a European, this complexity isn't necessarily a bug. In many ways, it's a feature. It is the modern expression of a long cultural tradition that sees complexity not as a problem to be solved, but as a sign of a mature, sophisticated, and resilient system. It's a recognition that the most enduring and valuable things in life, a thriving forest ecosystem, a vibrant city, even a human personality, are not simple and streamlined. They are rich, they are layered, and they are full of beautiful, maddening, and ultimately, life-affirming complexity. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this exploration of complexity interesting, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more dives into the hidden currents of history and culture. We'll see you in the next one. Do you ever feel overwhelmed? Like the world is just a tangle of rules, systems, and invisible connections that are impossible to grasp? Most of us do. And our first instinct is usually to simplify, to streamline, to find a clean, straightforward answer. But what if that instinct is wrong? What if the ability to not just tolerate, but thrive within complexity is a sign of a deeper, more resilient kind of cultural maturity. Today, we're going on a journey through 1,000 years of history to explore Europe's long and surprisingly patient relationship with complexity. It all starts with an empire that loved simplicity, Rome. Roman civilization was a marvel of standardization. They built straight roads that cut across mountains and forests, imposed unified legal codes, and spread a single language of power, Latin, across a vast continent. This was a system designed for clarity, control, and top-down efficiency. It was a beautiful, rational idea. But it was also an illusion, because just beneath that smooth Roman veneer, a rich tapestry of local cultures, ancient languages, and pre-Roman traditions continued to exist, simmering away. When Rome fell, it wasn't just a collapse. It was the moment this underlying complexity burst forth. The carefully constructed illusion of simple, unified control was shattered, and Europe entered a new, far more complicated age. The era that followed is often mislabeled the Dark Ages, but it was anything but simple. In fact, the medieval world was an age of profound and overlapping systems. Imagine you're a person living in the year 1200. You aren't just one thing. You are a subject of your local feudal lord, who demands loyalty and military service. At the same time, you might be a member of a powerful city guild, which has its own rules, its own courts, and its own economic power. You're a parishioner of the local church, which answers to a bishop, who in turn answers to the Pope and Rome, a spiritual authority that could challenge kings. And somewhere in the distance, there's a king or an emperor, whose actual power over your daily life might be surprisingly weak. These weren't mutually exclusive identities, they were layered, one on top of the other. Like geological strata, your legal rights, your taxes, your obligations could change dramatically just by walking from the countryside into a chartered city, or by deciding to join the clergy. So if you ask the simple question, who's in charge here? There was no simple answer. The answer was always, it's complicated. This political reality wasn't just a headache, it fostered a distinct mindset. The acceptance of layered authority, of multiple overlapping loyalties, became a hallmark of European thought. It seeped into the continent's cultural DNA. You can see it mirrored in the art and architecture of the time, especially in the magnificent Gothic cathedrals. Look at one of these soaring structures. Nothing is simple. Every element, the ribbed vaults, the flying buttresses, the intricate stained glass windows, even the monstrous gargoyles, has a specific, functional, and symbolic place within a grand, interconnected system. The entire building is a complex narrative in stone and glass, designed to tell a story about God, humanity, and the universe. This love for intricate systems also defined philosophy and theology. Scholars like Thomas Aquinas weren't looking for easy answers. They were master architects of ideas. Aquinas, in his great work, the Summa Theologica, didn't just give simple dictums. He built a vast intellectual cathedral, a system known as scholasticism, designed to reconcile Christian faith with the newly rediscovered philosophy of Aristotle. He meticulously wove together scripture, Greek reason, and church doctrine into a breathtakingly complex, yet coherent whole. The underlying belief was clear. The universe itself was seen as a complex, hierarchical system, and true understanding required an appreciation for its many layers. Simplicity wasn't seen as a virtue, it was seen as a failure of imagination. This comfort with complexity, in turn, created a unique environment for growth. Unlike highly centralized empires where a single bad ruler or a disastrous decree could bring the whole system crashing down, power in Europe was fragmented. Change was often a slow, negotiated process, a constant push and pull between the crown, the church, the nobility, and the rising merchant class. Yes, this could be frustratingly slow and inefficient, but it also created remarkable stability and resilience. It acted as a built-in safeguard against radical, top-down disruption. No single entity had enough power to completely remake society overnight. It was in this slow burn, negotiated environment that some of our most important modern institutions grew organically. Universities emerged from cathedral schools, gradually gaining independence and intellectual freedom. Independent legal systems like the English common law developed layer by layer, case by case, over centuries, and parliamentary bodies slowly evolved from councils of nobles and clergy, creating a space for negotiation and representation. These institutions weren't designed on a drawing board, they grew like ancient trees with complex, interlocking roots. Which brings us to the present day, and perhaps the ultimate expression of this legacy, the European Union. From the outside, the EU can look like an entity of almost baffling complexity. It's a multi-layered system of shared sovereignty, where national governments, a directly elected European Parliament, a powerful executive commission in Brussels, and a sprawling bureaucracy, all interact in a constant, intricate dance of negotiation and compromise. It often seems messy, inefficient, and full of contradictions. The natural question for an outsider is, why don't they just simplify it? But to ask that question is to miss the point. For many within this tradition, the complexity isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the modern expression of a deep cultural belief that values complexity as a sign of a mature, sophisticated, and ultimately a more resilient system. It's a system designed to prevent the concentration of power, to force compromise, and to accommodate immense diversity. When you think about it, the most enduring and beautiful things in life are never simple. A forest ecosystem isn't simple. A vibrant city isn't simple. A human personality isn't simple. They are all rich, layered, and full of beautiful, maddening complexity. The European story suggests that perhaps the goal isn't to build a simpler world, but to become wiser, more patient, and more skilled at navigating the complex one we already have. Thanks for watching. If this made you think, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the ideas that shape our world. See you next time.